There's something heavy sitting in the energy around this reading. Not heavy in a painful way, but heavy like the kind of silence that falls after something important has been said out loud for the first time. Like when a truth you've been sensing for a while finally has words attached to it. That's where we're starting today. Not with chaos. Not with confusion. But with this quiet, almost cautious feeling of something beginning to shift underneath the surface. And I want you to feel into that for a second before we go anywhere. Because I think some of you already know something has changed. You might not be able to point to exactly what it is or when it happened, but there's a part of you that noticed. A part of you that's been paying attention even when your mind was telling you not to get your hopes up. So let's go there together. Let's see what the energy is actually doing. The first thing I'm picking up on, and this is coming in strongly, is this sense of emotional turbulence around the person you're thinking about. Not the kind they're showing anyone. That's the thing about this energy. On the surface, this person might seem fine. They might seem busy or casual or even a little unbothered. But underneath that, there is something churning. Something they haven't been able to name yet, or maybe they've named it and they don't know what to do with it. I keep getting this image of someone standing in a room full of noise trying to hear one specific sound. Like they've been surrounded by distraction for so long that quiet actually makes them uncomfortable. And that's relevant here. Because I think that's been part of the pattern with this person. Not necessarily someone who is emotionally unavailable in a permanent, hopeless way. But someone who has leaned heavily on distraction. On surface-level things. On pleasure without depth. On connections that felt easy because they didn't ask anything real of them. And it worked for a while. It always does. When you keep yourself moving fast enough, you don't have to sit with the things that are waiting for you in the stillness. But something happened when they encountered you. Something didn't follow the pattern. Have you ever noticed how some people come into our lives and just refuse to be categorized the way we expected? Like no matter how hard you try to fit them into a familiar box, they keep slipping out of it. That's the energy I'm reading around you in relation to this person. You disrupted something in them that they weren't ready to have disrupted. And they're dealing with the aftermath of that right now. In private. In the quiet moments they can't fill. There's a real battle happening inside of them. I want to be honest about that because I think some of you have been feeling this and you haven't known how to interpret it. You've maybe wondered if they're pulling back. If the distance means they don't care. If the silence means you read things wrong. You didn't. What I'm seeing here is someone who is genuinely fighting with themselves. And when I say fighting, I mean there's a voice in them, the ego, the protective part, the part that has kept them safe by keeping things light, and that part is terrified. Because what they're feeling when it comes to you isn't light. It isn't casual. And that terrifies a part of them that has gotten very, very comfortable with casual. The ego keeps showing up in this energy almost like a lawyer. Building a case. Presenting evidence. This is too much. This isn't practical. What if it goes wrong? What if I lose something I can't get back? And there's another part, a quieter part, a deeper part, that keeps countering every argument with something the ego can't actually disprove. Just a feeling. Just this knowing. Just this inexplicable pull toward you that doesn't have a rational explanation and therefore can't be dismantled by rational argument. This is interesting, actually. Because the more the logical side tries to shut it down, the louder the feeling gets. This feels like someone who is not used to being overtaken by something they can't control. And I think that's important for you to understand about this person. Control has probably been really important to them. Keeping their emotional life at a manageable distance. Choosing situations where they could exit easily. Where they held the most cards. where vulnerability was always optional. You became something they couldn't fully manage. And they're not sure whether that's wonderful or terrifying. Honestly, it's probably both. Some of you listening are already familiar with this person's pattern. Maybe you watched them move lightly through things. Maybe you saw up close how easily they could set something down and walk away. And maybe somewhere along the way you started wondering if that's what would happen with you. If you were just another chapter. Another temporary season. I hear that fear. I understand why it's there. But the energy in this reading isn't pointing to that. What it's pointing to is exactly that contradiction that I think you've sensed. This person doesn't know how to walk away cleanly this time. Something got in. Something real. And that's made everything messier for them on the inside, even if their outside still looks composed. Take what resonates here, because this is a collective reading and not every detail will land for everyone. But for those of you this is speaking to, I want you to really sit with that for a moment. The person who always knew how to keep things easy is sitting with something that doesn't feel easy. And they're the ones who created that situation by letting you matter. Let's talk about this distance that's been present, because I think it needs to be addressed directly. The energetic distance I'm picking up on is an absence of feeling. And I want to separate those two things very deliberately because I think they can look identical from the outside and mean completely opposite things. Distance born of not caring looks one way. Distance born of too much feeling and not enough courage looks completely different underneath, even when the surface appears the same. What I'm sensing here is the second kind. This feels like someone who got close enough to realize what they were feeling, felt overwhelmed by it, and instinctively created space to try to get their footing back. Not because they stopped caring, but because caring that much felt like standing on ground that was suddenly unfamiliar under their feet. There may have been moments where you reached out and the response felt cooler than you expected. Moments where something that felt significant between you seemed to be treated casually afterward. And I think those moments stung, maybe more than you admitted to yourself or to anyone else. Because you couldn't tell if they were signals or self-protection. I'm getting the sense it was self-protection. But here's what I also want to acknowledge. That doesn't make it okay, if it hurt you. Both things can be true simultaneously. This person can be processing something real and genuine while also having handled it in a way that wasn't fair to you. Those aren't mutually exclusive. And I think being honest about that is important, because sometimes in these readings we can soften things too much in one direction or the other. Either we make the other person a villain or we excuse everything they've done because we understand the psychology. The truth is usually right in the middle. They are genuinely feeling something they weren't prepared to feel. And they haven't always handled that well. Both things are real. Now, there's a shift in the energy here. Because something is changing in terms of awareness. It's almost like someone who has been driving fast with the windows up suddenly rolling one down. Just a little. Just enough to feel something different come in. And that one breath of something different changes the whole experience of the drive. There's a kind of waking up happening. A coming back to something they set aside or tried to outrun. And it's happening because you can't actually outrun this kind of feeling. It follows. It waits. It's remarkably patient. I'm hearing something that keeps repeating in the energy around this person. It's not loud, but it keeps coming back. Something like, I can't keep pretending this isn't what it is. There's a recognition that the old patterns aren't working the way they used to. That the temporary pleasures that used to fill the space have started feeling hollow. Not because of some general dissatisfaction, but because they've had something real in their awareness now. And real things make hollow things feel hollow in a way they didn't before. Have you ever tasted something incredible and then found that the thing you used to eat all the time just doesn't hit the same way anymore? It hasn't changed. But you've changed, because now you know what something better tastes like. That's the energy I'm picking up on. This person's baseline has shifted because of what they experienced with you, whether they wanted it to or not. And that's significant. That's not something that simply reverses. I do want to speak to something else that's been coming through, which is the internal work happening on their end right now. Because this isn't just passive. There's something that feels like genuine reflection. Like moments of sitting with themselves and actually asking harder questions than they normally allow themselves to ask. Who do I actually want to be in this situation? What am I actually afraid of? What would happen if I stopped running from this? I don't want to make this sound like they've arrived at peace. They haven't. This feels more like the very beginning of someone turning to face something they've been facing away from. And that process is uncomfortable. It's not linear. Some days will feel like clarity and some days will feel like retreat. That's the nature of this kind of internal reckoning. But the direction of the movement is toward awareness. That's what I keep seeing. The movement is towards something more honest. For those of you who have been questioning your own perception, who have replayed moments and wondered if you were reading too much into them, I want to speak directly to that. Because I think a lot of you have done this. You've taken something that felt undeniably real in the moment and then talked yourself down from it afterward. You've been careful not to assume. Careful not to want too much. Careful to protect yourself by not fully trusting what you sensed. And some of that caution is healthy. Protecting yourself is always wise. But I also want to say this clearly. You're not imagining the energy. The thing you felt was real. The moments that mattered, actually mattered. You weren't projecting onto something that wasn't there. You were reading something that was genuinely present, even if the person on the other side of it hasn't known how to meet it honestly yet. There's something almost poignant in this energy, actually. Because I think both of you have been sitting with something real and neither of you has fully spoken it out loud. Both of you have been navigating this with more care than the other probably realizes. And there's something in that shared unspokenness that's actually quite tender, even though it's also been difficult. Let me go a little deeper into what I'm seeing for this person's emotional state, because I think it matters for understanding what you might be navigating in the near future. The storm that's happening inside them isn't random. It's purposeful in the sense that any real transformation is purposeful, even when it feels chaotic from the inside. They're not just confused about you. They're confused about themselves in light of you. And that's a much bigger, much more significant thing to be in the middle of. When someone has operated from a certain mode for a long time, telling themselves a particular story about who they are and what they need and what they're capable of, and then something or someone comes along that completely challenges that story, the process of revision is rarely smooth. It often looks like inconsistency from the outside. It looks like contradictions. It looks like two different people showing up on two different days, one of them warm and present and the other withdrawn and careful. And that's almost exactly what I'm seeing in the energy around this person. Two parts of them are not in agreement right now. The part that has been in charge for a long time, and the part that is waking up and wanting something different. The interesting thing, and this is something I want you to hold on to, is that the part waking up is stronger than it might appear. It's not fighting as loud. But it's fighting with something the other part doesn't have, which is the truth. And ultimately, truth has a way of winning. Not always on our timeline. Not always in the way we imagined. But it tends to find its way to the surface. I keep coming back to this sense that this person feels something with you that they haven't been able to talk themselves out of. And that's actually a remarkable thing when you consider how skilled they've been at managing their own emotional life. How many people have they been able to keep at a comfortable emotional arm's length? How many situations have they navigated without ever really losing their footing? And then there's you. Somehow different. Somehow inside something that their usual tools can't reach. I want to speak for a moment to where this seems to be moving, because I think that's what a lot of you are really asking about, even if the question looks like something else. The energy I'm getting isn't one of this being over. I want to say that clearly, though of course this is energy, this is collective, and each person's situation has its own specific details. But the overall current here isn't ending. It's complicating. It's deepening. It's moving through something difficult in order to come out somewhere more honest on the other side. The return of awareness that I mentioned, that I'm feeling strongly here, suggests that someone who has been somewhat absent or emotionally unavailable is beginning, however gradually, to show back up. Not with fanfare. Not overnight. But in small, maybe quiet ways that you might notice if you're paying attention. A text that has more in it than the surface words. A moment where something real slips through the careful composure. A situation where they don't take the easy exit the way they might have before. It's not going to be a grand declaration. Not yet, maybe not for a while. But the quality of the contact is shifting. And I think what the energy is asking of you, quite gently, is patience. Not the passive, waiting by the phone kind. But the kind of patience that comes from being rooted in yourself. From knowing what you sense without needing it validated every single day. From being able to hold space for someone else's process without losing the thread of your own worth, your own needs, your own story. Because here's something I want you to hear. This isn't a situation where you need to do something differently to make this person feel something they don't already feel. They already feel it. The work that's happening is on their side, inside themselves, in the territory they need to cross before they can meet you somewhere more open. Your job is not to chase that. Not to convince. Not to prove. Your job is to remain exactly who you are, fully and without apology. Because it's who you are that got through to them in the first place. Take care of yourself in the meantime. Not as a strategy, not to send a message, but because you deserve your own care regardless of what anyone else does. Stay rooted in who you are. Stay open without losing yourself in the waiting. And trust that if this is meant to reach you fully, it will. In ways that require nothing of you except to be present for it.